I happened to be in a roundtable conference and where serving Inspector General of Maharashtra Police was participating. And this gentleman, those days, used to head the cyber cell of the Maharashtra Police. And this meeting happened somewhere in November 2019, as date says 2019. And he quoted one example, and he said he was facing challenge in RA colony environment protest. Now, I come from Mumbai. I'm born near to that place, so I know that it's a small place where there are activists who are trying to protect that piece of greenery. They may not agree with the government's view, but I know each of them personally, and I know them for 3 decades. So I know that those guys are very nice people. They are nationalists. They are not against the country. Yes, they may not like your ideology. They may not like central government's ideology. They may not be liking individual in the ministries, but they are good people. But how come there were tweets which were coming up, and this officer brought up some tweets. These tweets were in Marathi, a local language, native language, and which not only talked about the issue but challenged and were in some words which were undermining the entire authority of the state. And it was something which was decisive, which was not been heard. So I called up a couple of these activists and asked them, hey, I know you. Even if we have difference of opinion, why are you putting such harsh words? And why are you being propagating this kind of thing? And they said, no, this is general public which is doing it. And so I had a reason to ask this officer, who is a very senior IPS officer heading the cyber cell, that how come people speak about these particular tweets and this particular issue? And he said, Vinit ji, none of the issues or none of the tweets have come from Maharashtra, let alone Maharashtra. They have not come from India. They all are originating from Pakistan. Now you can see it's a weaponization of a tool called as social media, and that too in a native language which we are not imagining. So the impact is very big. So I can go on giving you this kind of weaponization of social media, weaponization of data by our adversaries. I'll give you another example. One of the economists in a show today morning talked about India imports almost around 5.2 lakh crore rupees worth of goods from China and exports only 1.2 lakh crore goods, leaving a trade deficit of 4.2 lakh crores. Now I will give you this 4.2 lakh crore sounds very big, but one of the component in this is almost around 23 crore rupees. Now, if you see 4.2 lakh crore rupees and versus 23 crore rupees, it sounds very, very stupid and minuscule. But what is this 23 crore rupees import which we do? So, if you know about Maharashtra, there is a place called as Pandharpur, and every year there is a Wari. Wari means pilgrimage go to Pandharpur on a particular day, that is on Ashadi Ekadashi, and they pray to Lord Vithala there. And what do they have? They have a small thing of a metal which is called as tal. वो बजाते हैं और उस बजाने के धुन से वो आगे जाते हैं. This tal was traditionally been made by the people who are there, जिसको हम महाराष्ट्र में लोहार कहते हैं, blacksmith जो है वो बनाते थे. There was some understanding. Somebody understood that so many tals are required every year. The cost of the tal is not more than 60 to 70 rupees per piece. Somebody understood that the manufacturing cost is not 60 rupees. So they were dumped at less than 40 rupees per tal in Maharashtra to that locations where this is in bought. You try to buy this in Delhi, you will not get this because Delhi is not a place where you get tal. But if you go to Pune, you go to Prabhani, this is the places where people buy. And the cost, landed cost in Prabhani was much less than the manufacturing cost of this. And if you imagine that the only sole reason of the cost of dumping is less because there may be some labor arbitrage in China or something else like that, answer is no. There is a state sponsorship to this particular dump which is there, and they do not dump items which are very big and which you can immediately pay attention. The dumpings are done to the items which are less than 50 crore rupees annual import, 100 crore rupees annual import. Attention won't go there. And how do they do this? So now then, to understand that, how do they understand this market? How do they flood this market? Erode the entire manufacturing capability of the natives, replace the natives with imported items so that you don't have a skill. Then I'll have to go back to a conversation which I had with Vice Chancellor of Gautam Buddha University, Dr. The Vice Chancellor there. He gave me an example. We opened the floodgates somewhere in early 90s and we started importing technology and gave praise to people to manufacture or integrate refrigerators at home. Now I am a 71 born. So I saw one fridge which was bought by my father. It was there till I got married. It was there, and every 2 years we used to repair it, tie some strings to it, but work it out. But all of a sudden, new companies came in, and these refrigerator companies would integrate or assemble things in India. And so we started importing, the compressor which was there. As the compressors were imported, so we did not need a manufacturing unit in India. As we were not having manufacturing units, nobody was employing the people who were coming from university. So university stopped teaching what is the heat exchange or the compressors. Resultant is what? Today, if as an India, as a country, we decide to manufacture compressors, sir, we don't have teachers who can teach compressor technology or heat exchange technology. Resultant is, even if you want to migrate back to indigenous technology, you will have to create curriculum, you will have to create teachers and then do it, and which will be not less than a decade long. And who decides this? And how does it come? So then we will have to understand one thing which is called as colonization. And we authors of this book divided colonization in three parts. We see colonization to simple three part. One, military colonization. I don't have to explain. All the people who are here are senior. Military colonizations we have seen for 2000 years. People came with stick, sword, gun, cannon. They colonize us. And what happens to colonize? Then you have to see the GDP and the export data of 1840s versus 1940. The drastic fall shows that colonizer would take the advantage. Then the last 100 years, colonization migrated from military colonization to something else, and which was energy colonization. And we saw that the countries which exported oil, which exported petroleum products to the user country, and especially we as India, who imports a large chunk of energy, are dictated terms. And then we also saw economies which were not exporting oil to us, we were not importing oil from them, but yet they dictated terms to us. Isse tel mat kharido, isse ye mat khariye. And then they were also dictating what technology will be used in automobiles. So even when there are alternates to petroleum products, when there are alternates to hydrocarbon, yet we were using it because those who were benefiting out of that economy forced to use it. So this was energy colonization. In the last 2 decades, 20 years, we have seen new type of colonization, and this colonization is data colonization. What does it happen in this? Somebody plays with your data, understands the data, retains the data. So when you generate data, whether it is your personal data, whether it is in structured form, semi-structured form, or it is a non-structured form, it is collected somewhere. Somebody who has a power which of computing, maybe it is analysis under whatever name, quantum computing, or whether it is data analysis, he can generate information, also generate reports, generate information sets which will be used to take decisions. And we all know, as we are all coming from senior positions, information if available, decision making is better. Informed decision making makes perfect decisions. And so somebody decided to take the decision. While we were becoming victim of this part, where we were having an advantage till 1995, 97, 98, yet we decided to open the floodgates. I come from Mumbai, and there was a place in Mumbai called as SIPS. In this SIPS, there are 5 buildings. Name of the building is SDF, Standard Design Factory. When I joined SIPS in 1995, they were all, software hubs. The people were working in software industry, and I was working there as one of the guys. So I asked them, why do you call this SDF factory? They said, ये अभी नहीं, ये तो बहुत पहले यहाँ पे factories हुआ करती, बहुत पहले यानी what? So till 1989, 1919, Tandon used to make some chips there. Some Mr. Naik used to make chips there. So we realized that the moment you open the floodgates with multilateral agreements of WTC and all, we lose the edge, and we started importing chips. And that was the first time when we realized that colonization has started. And so, they replaced the domestic indigenous production. Over the period, we became service guys. We started participating in services. So our policies were framed like that. And then we were given to an advantage. It's always advantageous to buy economical goods from outsider rather than making your own products. And then compulsions at home made us to go away from research. Resultant in what? Resultant is we are dependent on a lot of input. What is today's import? We are importing nothing but social media. Data which comes to India, and I hear all the seniors who tell me that it is imperative that we have exchange of data. If you believe in the researchers, 91% of the data which we import is tribal data. Most of them is porn, which is absolutely not necessary. Impacts the culture of this country, also impacts the capability to generate economical sets by the youth, because they would waste time there. And 9% of the data which is economically viable, which is knowledge which is imported, which is needed for business or other activities, only 9%. Now, let me open the eyes of many of the people who are this. Out of this 9%, not a single percent of a data can be imported by us without paying for it. without seeking permission of the person who holds the data. They are not freely available. Their knowledge, their IPs protected by the respective people who have written it, respective countries. Whereas we were being told that 95% to free आता है, और वही 91% जो free आता है वो तो पूरा useless है. That is dumping and creating the scene. Now let us compare these 20 years where we had advantage, lost the advantage, and came to this situation where today we are discussing all this versus what Chinese did. And before this, many of us do not like Chinese. We all have some kind of anger against Chinese. Maybe because of the recent issues, or maybe because I've been learning this from my childhood. गई भूमि वापस लेंगे, किससे लेंगे, पाक से लेंगे, चीन से लेंगे. So probably that way. But what they did is two simple theories. One theory was Great Wall. Second theory was penetration or encroachment. Now, what was Great Wall? China. Every sixth person on the earth who is born is a Chinese. So is Indian, but we never thought of this that 6 में से एक बच्चा हमारा और एक बच्चा उनका, 15% उनके, 15% हमारे. Chinese put a great wall. They said, no, you cannot access Chinese people, you cannot access Chinese economy, you cannot understand what is their pattern of buying. See here, my sister, when she sends me Rakhi, she puts the Rakhi first on the social media, and then the Rakhi courier comes to me. Now somebody who wants to analyze would know that what type of Rakhi has been purchased by Indian girls. And somebody may decide to only manufacture those kinds of Rakhis. And Indian traditional businesses which is to make Rakhis, they may not have access to this kind of data. You understand, this is a tribal small business, but this business is scaled. So they created a wall. They did not give access. We called them communists, we called them names protectionists. But if you ask other countries also, many developed nations, go to Vietnam, sir, go to Europe, they also have put in some kind of walls. They may not have put in that kind of wall which Chinese put, but they've also put some kind of protections for themselves. And we let alone our entire borders, digital borders open. And what did Chinese did? They did something called as penetration and encroachment. And when I say Chinese, please compare this with other countries also. And rightly said by Chandrasekhar ji, we do not have any friends in this digital economy. There is no friend. So what Chinese did? They did penetration. How did they do penetration? First penetration was economical and cheaper. What example I gave you? वो छोटा सा जो वजन करने के लिए लगने वाला यंत्र है, ताल. That small piece, which is not more than 25 crore rupees economy in this country, even there they had an encroachment. They just wiped out that particular business from India. Two, strategy was to dump things. Now, whether the Chinese dump things here, or if you go and see what happened in the case of the agricultural molecule, which was bent, the pest. I'm trying to recollect the name of that. Androsulfan. Yeah, in the case of androsulfan, somebody came and just replaced that. I remember my father used to buy something called as, I don't know, heat or something, some kind of thing which used to put in a small pump and pump it out in the house. And we would get rid of mosquito, cockroaches, everything. Very simple, one particular thing. And it used to take care of the thick 20, something like that. But slowly, nobody understood, and we thought it is only problem of agriculture industry, it is only problem of pesticide. और 300 करोड़ की तो बात है, क्यों हम इतना हंगामा कर रहे हैं? We killed not only Excel Care Crop, but other pesticide making companies also. And what we did is we started importing these molecules. Now you have Kala heat for machhar, Lal heat for cockroach. So I asked them कि फिर lizard को मारने के लिए yellow heat आएगा, grasshopper को मारने के लिए green heat आएगा. The farmer who is not educated, who has less education, who has already been challenged to understand other things, now he has to understand 42 molecules to get rid of the pest in place of what he used to have earlier, a broad level molecule. Now these kind of penetrations were planned by not only China but other economies. And they may be sounding friend to us right now, but they may not be our friends when it comes to business. And how did they do the third penetration? They did the third penetration in your language, in your native language. TikTok came to us not in English. It came to us in Malayalam. It came to us in Tulu. It came to us in English. It came to us in Assamese. It also came to us in languages which you and me not be. Irani. Irani is a small language, a small pocket of people in Maharashtra who speak this language. Now, this was native pumping, which we do not think necessary that time, but that's the way they do encroachment. Now, when these things happen, encroachments happen, what happens to it? It leads to a lot of business loss. So, to say that the data can travel here and there, it is not important to the data. We'll have to come to today's topic, which is digital economy. Data becomes very important. I'll give you two small examples, and then I'll go to the part where in 5 minutes I'd like to close my part. I have a friend who is from Coimbatore. He is into business of cable TV. Somehow his business was getting challenged, so he was unable to pay to the manufacturer of the set-top boxes. One fine day, all his subscribers who have the set-top box, they got a message. that this cable TV subscriber has not paid our money, so we are stopping the services. Answer is, how is it possible for the supplier who sits from Delhi to do this? There is some backdoor in the small setup. Chandrasekhar ji would know that we have been fighting that particular case. And somebody couldn't decide to do it. Today, he just wrote that one particular line because he had a fight with this cable TV operator. Tomorrow, they could have flashed a message which is against this country. Third, they could have played with the democracy of this country. If somebody has this kind of thing. I also heard one example from Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, and which I like to share here. There was a tunnel which was being dug. While digging the tunnel, the machines which are worth few hundred crore rupees were used. All of a sudden, the machine started dysfunctioning. Engineers tried to repair it. It did not get repaired. Finally, they had no option but to go back to the manufacturer of the drill machine. The manufacturer said, "Aapka kuch payment baki hai. You have some payments pending. Please pay that and the machine will start." Payments were done and the machine started. I asked Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, what is the concern? He said the concern is if they have control of the machine, they would also have the data which is generated by IoT which is situated in that particular machine. Is the thickness, hardness of the stone which is there? How much is the length? What is the geospatial data? The latitude and longitude of the drilling position. And they would know what we are drilling, where we are drilling, and for what we are drilling. Understand, if your tractors have this device, they would know 4 months in advance what you are going to sow and reap. So they would know what is the supply of particular food grain in your country versus what is your need and demand. And then the gap they would be analyzed by them, and they may choose to dump a food grain which is far cheaper than what you are producing here in India. And that thereby they can create another kind of hierarchy, whatever you say in this. So let me sum up in the next 2-3 minutes. Whoever controls data controls everything, not only controls the data, but also controls the economy and the mind of the people who are using this data. The people who generate data are basically the slaves or the victims against whom this particular data will be used. So it is necessary that not only that keeping the data in our physical control, which is localization, but also have a sovereignty over that, sovereign right over this, so that the data do not go out. I personally do not believe into any kind of orange, green, and all this red data which has been described. I have met the NSCS, gave my recommendations. We have been fighting this particular part, and I think powerful people are there on this particular panel who can influence the government to decide this particular part. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, and that what is missed. I always wonder one thing when I study China and versus Indian losses, and Abhi would have heard this from my mouth 2-3 times earlier also. The length of the wall of China, the Great Wall of China, goes in thousands of kilometers, whereas the gap of the Khyber Pashtun gap or the Khyber Pass gap, from where all these attackers came in, whether it is Alexandra, Sikandar, or whether it is Gauri, or it is anybody else, is only few kilometers. I always wonder, unke purvaj, their ancestors could build that thousands of kilometers of wall. Mere purvaj, my ancestors, why they did not create this 2 to 3 kilometers of wall? My civilization would have saved. My country would have been 4 times bigger than the country which is right now. My religion would have been bigger than what it has been right now. Probably that vigilance which was not there, taking it very lightly. So digital boundaries have to be defined. It has to be defined whether it is civilian data, whether it is strategic data, whether it is important data, non-important data. It's a national issue. It is not a local subject. So there has to be some kind of law to be passed where we have a data commission or a data authority which talks about this. We also have to fix responsibilities of the fiduciaries which store this data, which sell this data. And I agree with Chandrasekhar ji. The current committee which has been appointed absolutely did not consider. And see all the people who are there. And if you see their incidents, all of them have worked in multinationals and their interests aligned with one particular country. Today we may be happy with that, but tomorrow it will be biggest challenge. We do not have anybody in that particular committee who have served this nation as an army officer or an police officer who also has to deal this. Not a single LEA, law enforcement agency person was there. We do not have anybody who comes from academics who understands this data in that particular team. So I have my own reservations on that particular committee. So data localization is not a protectionist move. Let me stress in bold highlighted words. Data privacy is a very big myth if you do not have data protection laws, stringent data protection. And data protection law is a very big myth if you do not have data sovereignty. if you do not have data within your own control. जो आपके हाथ में है नहीं, उसके बारे में क्या चर्चा करेंगे? There is a saying in Marathi, जो तड़ राखे तो पानी साके. तड़ यानी जो पॉन्ड, पानी जो तालाब को रखता है, जो तालाब का रक्षण करेगा वो तो पानी पिएगा उसमें से. The person who would protect the data would use the data, and how would you know that the data is not being used? So if you really want to make sure that the way I'm cursing my ancestors for not building that 3 kilometers of road in the cyber coastal way, our next generations, our grandchildren should not blame us for not taking decisions in right time. I always feel pained when I see my own colleagues going on television and blaming Nehru and all the other senior yesteryear's prime ministers, that they have not taken decision, and so we suffered in the northern part of India. When it is true, do you really want that after 30 years or 40 years, some other spokesperson of some political party come and blame you, saying that you did not take decisions when you were a decision maker, when you were in task force Vinit Goenka, when you were secretary Chandrasekharji, when Avik you were in Niti Ayog, you did not take decisions. So I think probably we'll have to take care of that. History will never forgive us if we don't take these decisions today. So my request to all the people is, it is not about आज की अर्थव्यवस्था. आज की अर्थव्यवस्था तो डगमगाई हुई है क्योंकि पिछले लोगों ने गलती किया. आगे की डगमगाएगी क्योंकि हमने अगर गलती की. So data is very sensitive. Data would generate sets of information which will help the decision maker to take decision, and we will have to control that, whether it sounds good or whether it sounds bad, whether it is in the agreement of multilateral agreements which we have signed in WTO, RCEPs, whether it is SARC or any other agreements. We'll have to rethink about this. Even if we have a favorable government, we'll have to push through this particular fight. Make sure that our interests are protected, our coming generations' interests are protected, and they do not blame us the way we blame people who were there in 30 years or 40 years before us.